Your name doesn't belong to you, Mr. Caldwell. The sentence landed before the water glass even touched the table, and for a split second, the entire private dining room at Lexington Avenue went silent. Ethan Caldwell looked up slowly from his phone, his reflection still glowing on the screen, then shifted his attention to the waitress standing beside him. Olivia Hayes held the glass steady, her posture straight, her expression calm, as if she had just commented on the weather instead of dismantling a man's identity in front of four investors and a senior partner from Boston. Ethan let out a short breath that almost passed for a laugh. "Excuse me," he said, his voice controlled, measured, the kind of tone that had closed billion-dollar deals and ended careers without raising volume. Around him, the table reset itself. One investor adjusted his cufflinks. Another reached for his bourbon but paused halfway. The rain tapped steadily against the tall windows, Manhattan blurred in streaks of gray and gold beyond the glass. Olivia placed the water down carefully, the base of the glass making a soft, precise sound against the white tablecloth. She did not step away. "I said," she repeated, her voice even, "your company wasn't founded by a Caldwell." Ethan leaned back in his chair, slow and deliberate, studying her now. He noticed details he had ignored a moment ago. The way she held eye contact without defiance. The way her hands remained still. No trembling. No apology. Just control. "You're making a mistake," he said, folding his hands on the table. "And I suggest you correct it before this becomes a problem." Olivia gave a small nod, as if acknowledging a reasonable point in a meeting. Then she reached into the pocket of her black apron and pulled out a narrow receipt. It was slightly creased, the ink faint in places, like it had been handled more than once. She set it beside his plate, aligning it neatly with the edge of his fork. "Then you should read that," she said. One of the investors leaned forward instinctively. Ethan did not move at first. He let the silence stretch, asserting control in the only way he knew how. Finally, he picked up the receipt between two fingers. His eye scanned the line once. Then again. The name written there was not Caldwell. His jaw tightened, just enough to be. Noticed if someone was looking for it. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice lower now, stripped of its earlier ease. Olivia met his gaze without hesitation. "From a case file your father sealed in 2003, she replied. A fork slipped against a plate somewhere down the table. The sound was small but sharp. Ethan placed the receipt back down with precision, flattening it against the tablecloth. "You're out of line," he said. "This is a restaurant, not a courtroom." Olivia's expression did not change. "You're right," she said quietly. "In a courtroom, it would already be public record." The words hung there heavier than before. Ethan felt the shift. Not in volume. In balance. For the first time since he had walked into the room, something was no longer under his control. He studied her again, more carefully now. "Who are you?" he asked. Olivia's eyes flickered, just once, toward the receipt, then back to him. "Someone who reads what others try to hide," she said. A pause. Then she added, softer but sharper, "and someone who knows why that name was changed." The rain outside grew louder, or maybe the room had just gone too quiet to ignore it. Ethan glanced down at the receipt again, the unfamiliar name staring back at him like a crack in glass he had always assumed was flawless. For a brief moment, something unspoken passed across his face. Not fear. Not yet. But doubt. And it was enough to change everything. The receipt stayed on the table like it had weight, as if the thin strip of paper carried more authority than the man whose name was printed on every building outside. Ethan did not touch it again. He leaned back slightly, adjusting the cuff of his tailored suit, buying himself a second to think. Across from him, Daniel Mercer, the Boston partner, cleared his throat and tried to restore normalcy. "Ethan, we should probably stay focused on the term sheet," he said, his tone careful but strained. Ethan nodded once without looking away from Olivia. "We will," he replied. Then his eyes dropped to the receipt again. After I understand why a server thinks she can walk into a private meeting and start rewriting history. Olivia did not flinch. She reached for the leather check folder tucked under her arm and opened it with practiced ease. From inside, she pulled out a second item. This one was not a receipt. It was a photocopy, standard letter size, slightly faded at the edges, the kind you would get from a courthouse archive or an old records office. She placed it gently beside the first paper. "You should not rely on what I think," she said. "You should rely on what was filed." Ethan's gaze sharpened. He leaned forward this time, slower, more deliberate. The document was a partnership agreement. The heading read New York State Corporate Registry. The date was June 14, 2003. Two names were listed under founding partners. One was familiar. The other was not. The unfamiliar name matched the one on the receipt. Ethan's fingers hovered over the page, then pressed down, flattening it as if pressure could make it less real. "This is incomplete," he said, his voice steady but tighter now. "Anyone can copy a document." Olivia gave a small nod again. "That is true," she said. "That is why I memorized the filing number." She tapped the top right corner of the page. A sequence of numbers sat there in faint ink. "You can look it up on the state database. It is still there." They could not erase everything. One of the investors had already pulled out his phone. His thumb moved quickly across the screen. Another followed. The quiet tapping of glass screens filled the space where conversation used to be. Ethan noticed. He noticed everything. The shift in posture. The absence of eye contact. The way control was slipping, not dramatically, but inch by inch. He exhaled slowly and looked back at Olivia. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. This time the question was not for the room. It was for her. Olivia held his gaze. "Because names matter," she said. "And yours is attached to something that was taken." Daniel leaned back in his chair, tension now visible. "Ethan, this is getting out of hand," he said. "We can verify whatever this is later. Right now, we have a deal to close." Ethan raised a hand slightly without looking at him. The gesture was enough to silence the interruption. He turned the document toward himself again, reading more carefully now. The language was legal, dense, precise. Profit distribution. Equity split. Signatures at the bottom. One signature he recognized from framed photos in his father's office. The other he had never seen. "You expect me to believe my father built this company with someone he never mentioned," Ethan said. Olivia's voice softened, but it did not lose clarity. "I expect you to ask why he never mentioned her?" The investor with the phone looked up. "Ethan," he said quietly, turning the screen around. The state database was open. The filing number matched. The names matched. The room shifted again, this time more visibly. Ethan stared at the screen, then at the paper, then at Olivia. The control he had relied on was no longer absolute. It was conditional. And someone else now held part of it. "You said her," he said slowly. "Who is she?" Olivia's fingers rested lightly against the edge of the table. "Her name is Margaret Hayes," she answered. The name hung in the air. Ethan repeated it under his breath, testing it against memory. Nothing surfaced. No story. No explanation. Just absence. Olivia watched him process it. Then she reached back into her apron one more time. "There is one more thing you have not seen," she said. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. "What is that?" Olivia slid a small, worn envelope onto the table, its edges softened by time. "A letter your father never sent," she said. The room went completely still as Ethan stared at the envelope, realizing that whatever was inside it might not just change the story of his company, but the story of his name. The envelope did not look important. It was small, off-white, the kind you could buy in a pack at any pharmacy, but the edges were worn down as if it had been carried for years. Ethan stared at it without touching it, his reflection faintly visible in the polished table beneath. "You brought this here," he said, his voice controlled but heavier now. "To a business dinner." Olivia did not move. "I brought it because this is where your name has the most power," she replied. "And the most witnesses." Daniel shifted in his chair. "Ethan, this is not appropriate," he said. "We are discussing a private matter in a public setting." Olivia turned her head slightly toward him. "It stopped being private when it became a company," she said. "And when that company took someone else's name out of the story." Ethan finally reached for the envelope. His fingers paused just before contact, then closed around it with deliberate care. The paper felt lighter than he expected. He turned it over. No stamp. No address. Just a faint crease where it had been sealed once and opened again. "You said my father wrote this," he said. Olivia nodded once. "He wrote it. He never sent it." Ethan slid a finger under the flap and opened it. The room seemed to narrow, every sound pulling back except the quiet friction of paper. Inside was a single sheet, folded twice. He unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was unmistakable. He had seen it on birthday cards, on notes left in his childhood study, on the signature that closed every major deal before digital signatures took over. For a moment, something shifted behind his eyes. Not weakness. Recognition. He began to read silently, his jaw tightening with each line. Then he stopped halfway through. "This does not prove anything," he said, though his voice had lost some of its certainty. Olivia did not respond immediately. She let the silence hold. Then she spoke. "Read the last paragraph." Ethan's eyes moved again, slower this time. The final lines were shorter, less formal, almost rushed. The words were clear. An acknowledgement. A name. Margaret Hayes. And a sentence that did not belong in a corporate document. "I took what was not mine to take." Ethan lowered the paper slightly. The words did not fade. They stayed, sharp and fixed. Daniel leaned forward. "What does it say?" he asked quietly. Ethan did not answer him. He looked up at Olivia instead. "You expect me to accept this as truth," he said. Olivia shook her head gently. "I expect you to recognize his handwriting," she replied. "And ask why he never showed you this." One of the investors spoke, his tone cautious. "Ethan, we can verify the authenticity of the document," he said. "Handwriting analysis, legal review, whatever you need." Ethan raised his hand again, but this time the gesture was slower, less absolute. He was not dismissing them. He was buying time. He looked back down at the letter, then at the photocopied agreement, then at the receipt. 3 pieces. Same name. Same direction. He exhaled, longer now. "Why you?" he said, his voice quieter. "Why are you the one standing here with this?" Olivia's expression shifted for the first time. Not into anger. Into something more personal. "Because my mother kept everything he tried to leave behind," she said. "And because she could not use it." Ethan studied her face more closely now. The calm was still there, but there was something under it. Not weakness. History. "Your mother is Margaret Hayes," he said. Olivia nodded. She corrected softly. A small pause settled between them. Ethan absorbed that detail, the past tense carrying more weight than any accusation. He repeated. "When did she pass?" Olivia's fingers rested against the edge of the table, steady. 3 years ago, she said. Before she could see any of this corrected. The words did not rise. They did not demand sympathy. They landed with quiet precision. Ethan looked back at the letter again. The line at the bottom felt different now. Not just a confession. A delay. A choice that had consequences beyond him. He folded the paper carefully, aligning the edges as if structure could contain what it said. "If this is real," he said slowly, "then there are legal implications." Olivia gave a small nod. "There always were," she said. "They were just ignored." Ethan placed the letter back into the envelope, but he did not slide it away. He kept his hand on it, anchoring it to the table. Around him, the room waited. Not for a reaction. For a decision. He lifted his gaze to Olivia again. "You said there is more," he said. Olivia met his eyes, steady as before. "There is," she answered. Then she added, "just enough to shift the ground again, and it is not in any archive you can access." Ethan's grip on the envelope tightened slightly as a new question formed, one that the letter had not answered. The envelope stayed under Ethan's hand, but his attention shifted the moment Olivia reached into her apron again. This time, what she pulled out was smaller than everything before. A rectangular object, about the size of a matchbook, wrapped in a thin layer of worn plastic. She placed it on the table without a word. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. "What is that?" he asked. Olivia slid it closer to him. "Open it," she said. He hesitated for a fraction of a second, then peeled back the plastic. Inside was a photograph. Old. Slightly faded at the corners. The kind printed from film, not digital. Ethan lifted it carefully. The image showed two people standing in front of a modest office building. No glass towers. No polished lobby. Just a brick exterior with a small sign above the door. He leaned closer. The sign read Hayes and Caldwell Research. His breath caught, not dramatically, but enough to shift his rhythm. "This was taken before the company was renamed," Olivia said quietly. Ethan's eyes moved across the photo. One man he recognized immediately. Younger. Less refined. His father. The posture was the same though. Straight. Certain. The other figure stood beside him, slightly turned toward the camera. A woman. Her expression was calm, almost reserved, but there was something steady in the way she held herself. Ethan looked up. "That is her," he said. Olivia nodded. "Margaret Hayes," she confirmed. Ethan studied the photograph again, this time focusing on the details. The building number was visible on the brick. 214 West 39th Street. A location. Concrete. Verifiable. One of the investors leaned in. "That address still exists," he said. "It is a co-working space now." Olivia responded without looking away from Ethan. Before that, it was a small lab. Before that, it was their first office. Ethan's grip on the photo tightened slightly. "You could have fabricated this," he said, but the edge in his voice had softened. It was no longer an accusation. It was a defense. Olivia tilted her head just enough to acknowledge the point. "Then check the timestamp," she said. Ethan frowned slightly and looked closer. In the bottom corner of the photo, a faint orange imprint read June 2003. The same month as the partnership filing. The same month as the letter. The alignment was no longer coincidental. It was structured. "You are connecting pieces," Daniel said, trying to regain footing. "That does not mean they tell the full story." Olivia finally turned toward him. "Then let us complete it," she said. She reached forward and tapped the edge of the photograph. "Flip it over." Ethan hesitated again, then turned the photo. On the back, written in the same handwriting as the letter, was a short line. "For the beginning we promise to share." Beneath it, two initials. RC and MH. Ethan stared at the letters longer than he expected. The simplicity of them made it harder to dismiss. No legal language. No formal structure. Just intent. Just agreement. He exhaled slowly, his mind recalibrating in real time. "If this is accurate," he said, then the company was not just renamed. It was reassigned. Olivia watched him closely. Now you are asking the right question, she said. One of the investors spoke again, more urgent now. Ethan, this affects ownership history. If there was an undisclosed partner, this could impact everything from equity to intellectual property. Ethan did not respond immediately. His attention remained fixed on the photograph, on the two figures standing side by side before anything had been hidden. Why was her name removed? He said, almost to himself, but loud enough for the room. Olivia answered without hesitation. Because she refused to sign a revised agreement, she said. The room shifted again. That was new. That was specific. Ethan looked up sharply. What revised agreement? He asked. Olivia reached into her apron one more time, slower now, as if the weight of what came next mattered more than everything before. She placed a thin stack of papers on the table, clipped neatly at the corner. The one your father presented 3 weeks after this photo was taken, she said. Ethan's eyes dropped to the stack, the top page already visible. The header read Amendment to Founding Agreement. His name was not on it. But his father's was. And beneath it, a blank line where another signature should have been. The stack of papers sat between them like a line no one could step back from. Ethan did not touch it at first. He looked at the blank signature line again, then at Olivia, then at the investors who were no longer pretending this was a normal dinner. Daniel leaned forward, his voice lower now but firm. Ethan, we need to pause this meeting, he said. If there is even a chance this is valid, we are exposed. Ethan did not answer him. His focus stayed on the document. 3 weeks, he said quietly. 3 weeks after the original agreement. Olivia nodded. That is when the amendment was drafted, she said. And when my mother refused to sign it. Ethan finally reached for the papers. He flipped through them, each page crisp, each clause more aggressive than the last. Ownership redistribution. Control clauses. A provision that would reduce the second partner's stake to a non-controlling percentage within 90 days. He stopped at a section highlighted in faint yellow. This would have removed her authority entirely, he said. Olivia's voice remained steady. That was the intention. One of the investors stood up halfway, then sat back down, unable to decide whether to leave or stay. Ethan, this is not just history, he said. If this was never executed properly, then the chain of ownership could be challenged. Ethan's jaw tightened. He closed the document and placed it back on the table with more force than necessary. You are presenting a narrative, he said, turning back to Olivia. But you are still missing the final piece. Why did she walk away? Olivia held his gaze. She did not walk away, she said. She was locked out. The words shifted the air again. Ethan's expression hardened. Explain that, he said. Olivia reached for the photograph again and tapped the building number. 2 weeks after she refused to sign, the locks were changed, she said. Her access badge stopped working. Her name was removed from internal directories. And the company was refiled under a single owner. Ethan's eyes narrowed. You are claiming corporate fraud, he said. Olivia did not react to the weight of the term. I am stating what happened, she replied. Daniel stood this time, pushing his chair back slightly. Ethan, I am calling legal, he said. He reached for his phone. Ethan's hand moved quickly, not aggressively, but decisively, pressing down on the table near the device. No, Ethan said. The word was quiet, but it carried authority. Daniel froze, then looked at him. You cannot control this, he said. Ethan's eyes did not leave Olivia. I can control when it becomes public, he replied. That was the shift. Subtle, but real. He was no longer dismissing her. He was managing the fallout. Olivia noticed it. You are thinking like a CEO, she said. You should also think like a son. Ethan's expression flickered for a moment. Then it settled again. Do not make this personal, he said. Olivia's voice softened slightly, but it did not lose its edge. It has always been personal, she said. She reached into her apron one more time and placed a small plastic card on the table. It was an old employee badge. The photo showed the same woman from the photograph, younger, but unmistakable. The name printed beneath it read Margaret Hayes. The company logo in the corner was the original one, not the version Ethan had grown up seeing. He picked it up. Slowly. The edges were worn, the magnetic strip scratched from use. Real. Used. Lived in. This was deactivated the same day the amendment was filed, Olivia said. Ethan turned the badge over in his hand, feeling the weight of something that had existed inside his company without his knowledge. You kept all of this, he said. Olivia shook her head slightly. She did, she replied. I just refused to let it disappear. The room was no longer waiting. It was watching. Ethan set the badge down next to the envelope, the letter, the photograph, and the amendment. For pieces. One story forming whether he accepted it or not. He looked at Olivia again, more directly now. If I verify this, he said, what do you want? Olivia did not answer immediately. That was new. For the first time, she paused. Then she said, I want you to see what he did before you decide who you are. Ethan held her gaze, the question shifting from business to something deeper, something less controlled. Then he spoke, slower this time. And if I find something you do not expect, he said, what happens then? Olivia's eyes did not move. Then we finally find out why he changed more than just the company name. The silence after Olivia's last sentence did not break. It stretched, deliberate, as if both of them understood that the next move would define everything that followed. Ethan did not look away this time. Instead, he reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out his phone. The motion was smooth, practiced, but there was a shift in intention. He was no longer reacting. He was initiating. You said everything could be verified, he said, his thumb already unlocking the screen. Olivia nodded once. Yes. Ethan tapped quickly, opening a secure company application, then another layer behind it. A biometric prompt appeared. He placed his thumb down. The investors watched without speaking. Even Daniel stayed still now. Ethan selected a restricted archive labeled Founding Records. There are files that were never migrated to public systems, he said. Internal transfers. Legal memos. Things my father kept off the books. Olivia's eyes followed the screen, but she did not lean in. She stayed where she was, grounded. Then you already know this is bigger than a name, she said. Ethan did not respond. A list of documents appeared, each tagged with dates from early 2003. He scrolled once. Then stopped. One file stood out. Emergency Restructuring Memo. Dated July 2, 2003. The same window. The same gap. He opened it. The text loaded slowly, line by line, as if the system itself resisted exposure. Ethan's eyes moved across the screen, faster now, scanning. Then something changed. His posture tightened. His grip on the phone shifted. This does not align, he said under his breath. Olivia caught it. What does it say? She asked. Ethan hesitated. For the first time since she had spoken, he did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned the phone slightly away, reading again, more carefully. Then he looked up. It says your mother requested a restructuring, he said. The words landed differently than anything before. Olivia's expression did not break, but there was a pause. A real one. That is not possible, she said. Ethan held the phone up now, turning the screen toward her. It is right here, he replied. July 2nd. Request initiated by Margaret Hayes. Proposal to reassign operational control. One of the investors leaned closer, trying to read from a distance. That contradicts everything, he said. Olivia stepped forward for the first time since placing the documents. Just one step. Enough to see clearly. The memo was real. The formatting matched the era. The internal code matched the system's structure. Her eye scanned the lines quickly. Then slower. Then she stopped. Scroll down, she said. Ethan did. The next section appeared. Authorization pending. No final approval recorded. Olivia's gaze sharpened. Keep going, she said. Ethan scrolled again. A final line appeared at the bottom. Filed under conditional execution. Trigger clause attached. Ethan read it once. Then again. There is an attachment, he said. Olivia's voice dropped slightly. Open it. Ethan tapped the link. A new document loaded. This one shorter. More direct. A contingency agreement. It outlined a transfer of control only if a specific condition was met. Ethan's eyes moved to the condition line. Then stopped completely. The room felt smaller. What is it? Daniel asked. Ethan did not answer him. He looked up at Olivia instead, his expression no longer controlled in the same way. There was something else now. Not doubt. Not certainty. Something forming between them. It says the transfer only happens if she fails to appear, he said slowly. Olivia's breath stilled, almost imperceptible. Fails to appear where? She asked. Ethan glanced back at the screen. His voice dropped another level. At a meeting scheduled on July 9, 2003. Final signature required. Olivia's mind moved quickly now, connecting pieces that had never fit before. She was there, she said. She told me she went. Ethan shook his head slightly, still looking at the screen. According to this, he said, she did not show up. The contradiction did not resolve. It widened. And for the first time, the story was no longer just about what had been taken. It was about what might have been prevented. Olivia stepped closer to the table, her eyes locked on the phone. Where was the meeting held? She asked. Ethan scrolled to the header. His voice was steady again, but different. Caldwell Headquarters. Conference Room B. Olivia's expression shifted, not into confusion, but into realization. That room did not exist in that building, she said. Ethan looked at her sharply. What do you mean? Olivia met his gaze, her voice precise. The office at 214 West 39th only had one conference room in 2003, she said. I have been there. The detail landed harder than any accusation. It was specific. Verifiable. Structural. Ethan looked back at the screen, then at the photograph, then at Olivia. The pieces were no longer just conflicting. They were pointing somewhere else entirely. He locked the phone slowly, his mind already moving ahead. Then either the record is wrong, he said, or the meeting never happened where it claims. Olivia held his gaze. Or someone made sure she could not appear, she said. The room went still again, but this time the silence carried a different weight. Not exposure. Direction. Ethan picked up the envelope again, his fingers tightening slightly as a new question surfaced, one that had nothing to do with ownership and everything to do with intent. If she was kept away, he said quietly, then who had the authority to move that meeting without a record? The question did not stay in the air for long. Ethan did not wait for anyone else to answer it. He turned back to his phone and reopened the archive, his movements sharper now, more precise. Authority changes leave a trail, he said. Even when someone tries to hide it. Olivia watched him closely. This was different. He was no longer defending his father. He was dissecting him. Ethan navigated deeper into the system, bypassing standard folders and entering an internal audit log that required a second authentication. He entered a passcode from memory. The screen flickered, then loaded a sequence of time-stamped entries. These logs were never meant to be reviewed outside legal, he said. Every room booking. Every override. Every access change. He scrolled to July 2003. The entries tightened. Denser. More frequent. Then he stopped. There, he said quietly. Olivia stepped closer again, standing beside the table now. The entry read Conference Room B, temporary designation. Authorized by Ard Caldwell. Timestamp. July 8th. One day before the scheduled meeting. Olivia's eye sharpened. Temporary designation, she repeated. That means the room did not exist until he created it. Ethan nodded once. Or until he renamed something else? He tapped the entry. A secondary note expanded beneath it. Location reassigned from storage room 2. Ethan exhaled slowly. He converted a storage room into a conference room overnight, he said. Daniel frowned. Why would he do that? He asked. Ethan did not answer him. He was already scrolling further. Another entry appeared. Access credentials updated. Margaret Hayes. Status. Restricted. Olivia's breath stilled again, but this time it was not confusion. It was recognition. That is how he kept her out, she said. Her badge would not open that door. Ethan's jaw tightened. And if she went to the main conference room, he added, she would have been in the wrong place. The realization settled across the table. It was not just exclusion. It was design. One of the investors leaned back, shaking his head slightly. That is deliberate, he said. That is not a misunderstanding. Ethan's gaze stayed on the screen. He scrolled one more time. A final entry appeared. Meeting concluded. Attendees present. Ard Caldwell. Witness signature recorded. Ethan tapped the witness field. A name appeared. Not a partner. Not a lawyer. An internal operations manager. Someone who would follow instructions, not question them. Ethan leaned back slightly, the phone still in his hand. He created the room, he said. Changed her access. Held the meeting without her. Then recorded it as complete. Olivia's voice was quiet but steady. And then he used that record to activate the transfer clause, she said. Ethan looked at her. The pieces had aligned. Not perfectly. But enough. Which means, he said slowly, the company was not reassigned because she failed to appear. Olivia held his gaze. It was reassigned because he made sure she could not. The power in the room shifted completely. Not toward Olivia. Not fully toward Ethan. It shifted toward the truth itself, now structured, now undeniable. Daniel spoke again, but his voice had changed. Ethan, if this is accurate, then every major decision made under that ownership could be challenged, he said. We are talking about decades of exposure. Ethan nodded slightly, but his focus did not break. He was not thinking about exposure. He was thinking about intent. He looked down at the phone again, then back at Olivia. You said there is more that is not in the archive, he said. Olivia reached into her apron again, but this time her movement was slower, more deliberate than before. She pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. Not official. Not structured. Handwritten. She placed it beside the phone. This was found in my mother's notebook, she said. Ethan looked at it, then unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was not his father's. It was Margaret's. A single line, written in firm, steady script. He changed the room. I changed the reason. Ethan read it twice. The words did not resolve immediately. They introduced something new. Not just manipulation. Response. He looked up at Olivia, his expression sharper now. What does that mean? He asked. Olivia met his gaze, and for the first time, there was something else in her eyes. Not just history. Strategy. It means she knew what he was doing, she said. Ethan's grip on the paper tightened slightly. The narrative shifted again, not toward innocence, not toward guilt, but toward something more complex. Then why did she not stop it? He said. Olivia did not answer right away. She let the question settle, let it carry its weight. Then she spoke, quieter than before. Because she needed him to believe it worked, she said. The room went still again, but this time the silence carried anticipation instead of shock. Ethan stared at the note, the words no longer just evidence, but a signal. Needed him to believe, he repeated. Olivia nodded. So that he would sign something else, she said. Ethan's eyes lifted slowly, the direction of the story turning in his mind. What did he sign? He asked. Olivia held his gaze. That is not in your system, she said. Ethan looked down at the note one more time, then back at her. The balance had shifted again. This time, not just exposing the past, but suggesting a move that had never been revealed. Then where is it? He said quietly. The question did not intimidate Olivia. It sharpened her. She stepped closer to the table, close enough now that the edge of the white tablecloth brushed against her fingertips, and for the first time, she reached for something that had not yet been seen. From the inside lining of her apron, she pulled out a slim, dark leather notebook. It was worn at the corners, the spine slightly bent, as if it had been opened and closed hundreds of times over the years. She placed it gently on the table, next to the photograph and the letter, but did not open it immediately. Ethan's eyes locked onto it. That is hers, he said. It was not a question. Olivia nodded. She wrote in it every day for 6 months, she replied. From the day they signed the original agreement to the day she lost access to the office. Ethan leaned forward slightly, his hand still resting on the envelope, but his attention fully shifted now. Then open it, he said. Olivia did not move right away. She looked at him instead. You are not ready for what is inside, she said. Ethan's expression hardened again, but it was different from before. It was no longer dismissal. It was control trying to reassert itself. I decide what I am ready for, he said. Olivia held his gaze for a moment longer, then flipped the notebook open. The pages were filled with tight, consistent handwriting. Dates marked at the top of each entry. She turned a few pages, then stopped. June 21st, she said quietly. 3 days before the amendment was drafted. She rotated the notebook toward him. Ethan read the entry. The words were not legal. They were personal, but precise. He is rushing the timeline. He wants control before the next funding round. He thinks I will not see it. Ethan's eyes moved across the page, then to the next line. If he pushes the amendment, I will let him. That line held him longer. He looked up. She agreed to it, he said. Olivia shook her head slightly. Keep reading, she said. Ethan's eyes dropped back down. The next sentence was underlined. But only if he signs the contingency clause I added. Ethan exhaled slowly, the meaning settling in layers. She expected this, he said. Olivia nodded. She planned for it, she replied. Daniel stepped closer now, unable to stay out of it. What contingency clause? He asked. Olivia turned a few more pages, then stopped again. July 2nd, she said. The same day as the memo you found. She slid the notebook closer. Ethan read. Draft delivered. He did not read the last page carefully. He never does. Ethan's brow tightened slightly. That is an assumption, he said. Olivia pointed to the next line. It is not, she said. Ethan read again. I added a reversion clause. If control is transferred under false attendance, ownership returns after verification. The room shifted again, but this time the tension carried a different direction. Not exposure. Possibility. Ethan leaned back slowly, processing. A reversion clause, he repeated. That would invalidate everything if the condition was triggered. Olivia nodded once. "And you just proved the condition," she said. Ethan's eyes flicked to the phone, then back to the notebook. The pieces were no longer just aligning. They were building something. A counterweight. He looked at Olivia, studying her more carefully now. "You knew this was here," he said. Olivia's expression did not change. "I knew she wrote it," she replied. "I did not know if he signed it." That was the shift. Subtle, but critical. The certainty was no longer entirely on her side. Ethan noticed it. He picked up the notebook, flipping through the pages himself now, scanning for something more concrete. Something final. His control was returning, but differently. Not over her. Over the situation. "If this clause exists," he said, "then there has to be a signed copy somewhere." Olivia nodded. "Yes," she said. "There does." Ethan stopped flipping. He looked up slowly. "Where?" he asked. Olivia held his gaze, steady, composed, but now there was something else beneath it. Confidence. "Not in your system," she said. "And not in any court file." Ethan's grip on the notebook tightened slightly. "Then where?" he repeated. Olivia closed the notebook gently and rested her hand on top of it. "In the one place he thought no one would ever look again," she said. Ethan's eyes narrowed, the direction forming in his mind before she even spoke the next words. "The original office," she added quietly. The room went still again, but this time the silence carried momentum. Ethan glanced at the photograph. 214 West 39th Street. The address was no longer just a detail. It was a destination. He looked back at Olivia, his voice lower now, more focused than at any point before. "If that document is there," he said, "then everything changes tonight." Olivia did not look away. "It already has," she replied. Ethan held her gaze for a moment longer, then reached for his jacket. The decision had been made. "Then we are not finishing this dinner," he said. And as he stood, the question that followed did not slow him down. It pushed him forward. What exactly did she hide in that building? The chair legs scraped softly against the floor as Ethan stood, but the sound did not break the focus in the room. It redirected it. Every eye followed him, not because he raised his voice, but because he did not. He slipped his phone into his jacket, then reached for the envelope, the photograph, and the notebook, gathering them with precise movements as if each item had already been assigned a role in what came next. "Daniel," he said without looking up, "reschedule the signing. Tell them we need 12 hours. Daniel blinked once, caught off guard. 12 hours for what? He asked. Ethan straightened, finally meeting his eyes. For verification, he said. And for control. That word landed differently now. Not as dominance. As strategy. Olivia watched him carefully. This was the shift she had been waiting for. Not belief. Not denial. Action. Ethan turned toward her. "You are coming with me," he said. It was not a request. Olivia did not hesitate. "I assumed I was," she replied. One of the investors stood abruptly. "Ethan, this is reckless," he said. "You are walking away from a deal worth $200 million based on documents you have not authenticated." Ethan paused just long enough to respond. "If these documents are real," he said, "that deal is already compromised." The investor fell silent. The logic was no longer abstract. It was immediate. Ethan moved toward the exit, then stopped halfway, turning back to the table for one final adjustment. He reached down and picked up the amendment document, folding it once and sliding it into his inner pocket. "We are not leaving anything behind," he said. Olivia noticed that. Not the action itself. The intention behind it. He was not just investigating. He was preserving evidence. As they stepped out into the corridor, the noise of the restaurant returned in fragments. Glassware. Low conversation. the distant hum of traffic outside. It felt disconnected from what had just happened inside that room. Ethan walked ahead, his pace steady, his posture unchanged, but his mind had shifted into something sharper. He pulled his phone out again as they reached the elevator and dialed a number from memory. The line connected on the second ring. "This is Ethan Caldwell," he said. "I need after-hours access to the property at 214 West 39th Street. "Yes." "Tonight." A pause. "Then, no, I do not care who manages it now. I want the master key code and the current floor plan." He ended the call before the response fully settled, as if he had already anticipated it. Olivia stood beside him, silent for a moment, then spoke. "You are assuming the document is still there," she said. Ethan pressed the elevator button. "I am assuming my father did not trust anyone enough to destroy it," he replied. The doors opened with a soft chime. They stepped inside. The mirrored walls reflected them from multiple angles. A CEO in a tailored suit holding fragments of a past he never questioned. A waitress standing beside him with a story she had carried alone. Ethan glanced at her reflection briefly. "If this is a setup," he said, "it is a very precise one." Olivia met his eyes in the mirror. "It had to be," she said. He was not careless. The elevator began to descend. Ethan tapped his phone again, pulling up a map of Midtown Manhattan. He zoomed in on West 39th Street, then overlaid the building layout that had just been sent to him. "Storage room 2, he said quietly. "That is where he created the fake conference room." Olivia nodded. "And where she would have looked when she realized something was wrong," she added. Ethan's finger hovered over the screen, tracing the layout. Then he stopped. "There is something else," he said. Olivia turned slightly toward him. "What?" she asked. Ethan rotated the phone so she could see. A small annotation sat in the corner of the floor plan. Not part of the official design. Handwritten. Scanned in. Archive closet. Restricted. Olivia's eyes narrowed. "That was not in the original layout," she said. Ethan nodded once. "No," he said. "It was added later." The elevator slowed as it reached the ground floor. The doors began to open. Ethan stepped forward, his focus narrowing again, but now with direction. If he created a room to hide a meeting, he said, he could have created another to hide what came after. Olivia followed him out into the night, the city air cooler now, sharper against the tension building between them. "Then we are not just looking for a document," she said. Ethan stopped just outside the entrance, the glow of streetlights reflecting off the glass behind him. He turned to her, his expression no longer guarded, but resolved. "No," he said. "We are looking for what he thought was safer than the truth." And as they stepped toward the waiting car, the question that followed was no longer uncertain. It was inevitable. What did he hide in that closet that was worth rewriting everything else to protect? The car ride across Midtown did not take long, but it felt compressed, as if time itself had narrowed to a single outcome waiting ahead of them. Ethan did not speak for most of it. He sat forward slightly, one hand resting against his knee, the other holding his phone with the floor plan still open. Olivia watched the city pass in reflections across the window, but her attention stayed anchored to him. This was no longer about convincing him. It was about what he would do with what he already understood. The car pulled to a stop in front of 214 West 39th Street. The building looked smaller than the photograph suggested. Older. The brick was darker now, the signage replaced by a generic co-working logo mounted above the entrance. A faint flicker from a fluorescent light inside gave the lobby a tired, after-hours feel. Ethan stepped out first, his gaze scanning the exterior with quick precision, as if comparing memory he did not realize he had. Olivia followed, the night air cooler here, quieter than the avenue they had just left. "You have been here before," she said. Ethan did not deny it. "Once," he replied. "Years ago. After my father passed." He walked toward the door, already entering the access code he had been given. The keypad beeped softly, then the lock clicked open. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of cleaning solution and old carpet. The front desk was empty. A security camera blinked red in the corner. Ethan glanced up at it briefly, then moved past without hesitation. "Storage room 2, he said, checking the floor plan again. "Back hallway. Left side." They moved through the space quickly, their footsteps muted against the worn carpet tiles. The hallway lights hummed overhead, casting a flat, even glow that made everything feel more exposed. Olivia slowed slightly as they reached the corridor. "This part used to be restricted," she said. "You needed a badge to get past that door." Ethan looked at the door she indicated. It was propped open now, the lock replaced with a simple latch. "Not anymore," he said. They stepped through. The layout shifted. Narrower. More utilitarian. The kind of space designed for function, not presentation. Ethan counted the doors as they passed them. 1. 2. Then he stopped at the third. A small metal plaque was still screwed into the wall beside it. "Storage 2. The letters were faded but legible. Olivia's breath slowed slightly, her focus tightening. "This is it," she said. Ethan reached for the handle and turned it. The door opened without resistance. Inside, the room was smaller than expected. Shelving units lined the walls, most of them empty. A few old boxes sat stacked in the corner, labeled with dates from recent years. Nothing immediately significant. Nothing that explained why this space had been altered 20 years ago. Ethan stepped inside, scanning quickly. If something was hidden here, he said, it would not be left in plain sight. Olivia moved to the opposite wall, her eyes tracing the edges, the seams, the places where something could have been changed. "She wrote that he created the room," she said. "Not that he used it only once." Ethan turned, following her line of thought. He walked to the shelving unit closest to the back wall and ran his hand along the metal frame. Then he stopped. "This does not match," he said. Olivia looked over. "What do you mean?" Ethan tapped the side panel lightly. The sound was different. Hollow. He pressed again, more firmly this time. The panel shifted slightly under pressure. Not loose. Designed. He looked back at her. "Step back," he said. Olivia did not argue. She moved a half step away as Ethan gripped the edge of the panel and pulled. It resisted for a moment, then gave way with a muted click. The section of shelving slid forward just enough to reveal a narrow space behind it. Not a full room. A concealed compartment. Olivia's eyes widened slightly, not in shock, but in confirmation. "He built a second layer," she said. Ethan leaned in, the phone light illuminating the hidden space. Inside, there was no clutter. No random storage. Just a single, flat metal box mounted against the wall, secured with a small combination lock. Clean. Intentional. Preserved. Ethan stared at it for a moment, the realization settling deeper than anything before. This was not oversight. This was preparation. "That is not something you forget," he said quietly. Olivia stepped closer again, her gaze fixed on the box. "No," she said. "That is something you come back for." Ethan reached out, his fingers hovering just short of the lock. He did not touch it yet. Not immediately. For the first time since they had arrived, he paused. Not out of doubt. Out of calculation. He turned slightly toward Olivia. "If this contains what you think it does," he said, "then everything we saw tonight is only part of it." Olivia met his gaze, steady as before. "Then open it," she said. Ethan looked back at the lock, the numbers faintly worn from use long ago. The final step was no longer about finding evidence. It was about confirming intent. And as his hand moved closer to the dial, one question surfaced that neither of them could ignore. What if he did not hide this from the world, he said quietly, but from me? The lock did not look complex. 3 rotating dials. Faded numbers. The kind of mechanism designed to be remembered, not guessed. Ethan's fingers hovered over it for a moment longer, then he exhaled slowly and turned the first dial. He would not choose something random, he said. Olivia stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the box. No, she replied. He would choose something he believed only he understood. Ethan turned the second dial. Or something he thought I would never question, he added. The third dial clicked into place with a soft, final sound. For a brief second, nothing happened. Then the lock released. The click was quiet, but it carried more weight than anything that had come before. Ethan did not open the box immediately. He looked at Olivia once, just to confirm the moment was shared, then lifted the lid. Inside, there was no clutter. No excess. Just a single folder, sealed in a transparent sleeve, and a small digital recorder placed beside it. Ethan reached for the folder first. He slid it out carefully and placed it on the edge of the shelf, then opened it. The top page was different from everything they had seen so far. Not a draft. Not a memo. A finalized agreement. The heading read Reversion Clause Activation and Ownership Confirmation. Ethan's eyes moved quickly across the page, then slowed as he reached the signatures. 2 names. Margaret Hayes. Richard Caldwell. Both signed. Both dated. July 9, 2003. Olivia leaned in slightly, her breath steady but deeper now. He signed it, she said. Ethan did not respond right away. He read the clause again, this time out loud, his voice controlled but carrying a new edge. If control is obtained through procedural obstruction or false attendance, full ownership shall revert to the original partnership structure upon verification by any acting successor. He stopped. The word settled into the space between them. That means, he said slowly, the company was never fully his. Olivia's voice was quiet, but certain. It means it was never fully yours either, she said. Ethan looked at the signatures again. His father's handwriting. Clear. Undeniable. Not hidden. Not forged. Chosen. That was the shift. Not just exposure. Admission. One of the strongest pieces of control in his life had just been rewritten by the man who built it. Ethan turned the page. Attached behind the agreement was a notarization seal. Official. Time-stamped. A third-party validation that could not be dismissed as personal or private. This is enforceable, he said. Olivia nodded. It always was, she replied. Ethan exhaled slowly, the weight of the document settling into something more defined. Not chaos. Structure. He reached for the digital recorder next. It was small, older, the kind with a physical play button. He turned it over in his hand, then pressed it. A brief static crackled, then a voice filled the narrow space. It was unmistakable. Richard Caldwell. Older than the photo. Tired, but precise. If this recording is being played, the voice said, then the clause has been found. Ethan froze, the device still in his hand. Olivia did not move. The voice continued. Margaret insisted on the reversion. I agreed. Not because I intended to lose control, but because I knew I had already crossed a line I could not explain to my son. Ethan's grip tightened slightly around the recorder. The words did not rush. They landed, one by one. I created the room. I changed the access. I justified it as business. It was not. A pause. A breath. If he finds this, then he knows what I did. And he has to decide what to do with it. The recording ended with a soft click. Silence returned, but it was no longer empty. It was full. Ethan lowered the recorder slowly, his mind recalibrating around something that could not be undone. His father had not just hidden the truth. He had preserved it. Intentionally. Olivia watched him, her voice softer now, but still steady. "He left it for you," she said. Ethan looked at her, the balance of power no longer resting on accusation or defense. It rested on choice. "He left it for himself," he said quietly. "He just knew I would be the one to open it." He looked back at the agreement, then at the recorder, then at the concealed space that had held both for 20 years. The truth was no longer fragmented. It was complete. And it was his. He closed the folder carefully, his movements precise again, but different now. "Decided. This changes everything," Daniel's voice echoed faintly from memory, but Ethan did not need to hear it again. He already understood. He turned toward Olivia, his gaze steady. "You said you wanted me to see what he did," he said. Olivia met his eyes. "I did," she replied. Ethan nodded once. "Then now you need to see what I do next," he said. And as he picked up the folder and stepped back from the hidden compartment, one question remained, sharper than any before. Not about the past. About the future. Who else knows this exists? The room felt smaller after the recording ended, as if the walls had closed in around a truth that had waited too long to be heard. Ethan stood still, the folder in one hand, the recorder in the other, but something inside him had shifted in a way no document could explain. He looked down at the signature again, then at the line his father had spoken. "I crossed a line I could not explain to my son." The words echoed, but they did not stay in the present. They pulled him backward. Years ago. A quiet office. Late evening light cutting across the glass desk. His father standing near the window, older than Ethan had ever noticed at the time. "You do not understand everything yet," his father had said. Ethan remembered the way he had responded. Sharp. Certain. "I understand enough to know you built something that works. That is all that matters." His father had paused, just for a second. It had been small. Easy to ignore. Ethan had ignored it. He had picked up a contract, signed it without asking another question, and walked out of the room with the confidence of someone who believed clarity was strength. Behind him, his father had remained by the window, silent. The memory did not fade gently. It tightened. The moment he had chosen certainty over understanding. The moment he had reduced everything his father had built into a result, not a story. Ethan blinked, the present returning around him, but not fully. His hand trembled slightly as he set the recorder down. It was subtle, but real. Olivia noticed it. She did not speak. She let the silence hold, but this time it was not tension. It was space. Ethan reached into his jacket again, but this time not for control, not for access, not for leverage. He pulled out his phone and stared at it for a moment longer than necessary. His thumb hovered over the screen. "I should have asked him," he said quietly. The words were not directed at Olivia. They were directed somewhere else. Somewhere he could no longer reach. Olivia stepped closer, but she did not interrupt. Ethan's breath slowed, then caught slightly as something unfamiliar surfaced. Not confusion. Not calculation. Regret. He opened his contacts, scrolling past names tied to business, to influence, to power, until he stopped. The name was simple. No title. No company. Just one word. Home. His thumb hesitated again. "She called me once," he said, his voice lower now. "After he died. I did not answer." Olivia's eyes softened slightly, but she remained still. Ethan swallowed, his grip on the phone tightening as the memory pressed closer. The missed call. The voicemail he had never listened to. The decision to move forward instead of looking back. He pressed the screen. The call connected. The sound of it ringing filled the small hidden space, steady, unavoidable. Each ring stretched longer than it should have. Then a voice answered. Older. Careful. Hello. Ethan closed his eyes for a brief second. When he spoke, his voice was not the same. It is Ethan, he said. A pause on the other end. Then, quieter, I know who this is. Ethan's hand trembled slightly again, but he did not pull away. I should have called you years ago, he said. The words came slower now, but they did not stop. I thought I understood everything he built. I was wrong. The silence on the line shifted. Not distant. Listening. Ethan exhaled, and this time it was not controlled. It carried weight. I found something tonight, he said. Something he left behind. Something he should have told me. Something I should have asked about. His voice caught, just slightly, but enough to break the last layer of control he had held onto. A tear formed, uninvited, and he did not wipe it away. He let it stay. I think he was trying to fix what he did, he continued. And I think I ignored the chance to understand why. The voice on the other end remained quiet for a moment, then spoke. Where are you? It asked. Ethan opened his eyes, looking at the hidden compartment, the box, the documents that had rewritten everything he thought he knew. At the place where it started, he said. Another pause. Then you are finally where you need to be. The call did not end abruptly. It settled. Like something unfinished had finally been acknowledged. Ethan lowered the phone slowly, his hand still unsteady, but his direction clear. He turned to Olivia, his expression no longer guarded, no longer divided between defense and doubt. It was something else now. Whole. There is one more thing he did not say in that recording, he said. Olivia met his gaze. What? She asked. Ethan looked back at the folder, then at the space behind the wall. Who he was trying to protect when he changed everything, he said quietly. The hidden compartment no longer felt like a discovery. It felt like a threshold. Ethan stood there, the folder in his hand, the weight of everything shifting into something that could not stay contained in a room, in a box, or in a story told too late. He looked at Olivia, his voice steady but changed. We are not keeping this here, he said. Olivia nodded. No, she replied. We are finishing it. The drive to the hospital was quiet, but it was not the same silence as before. It carried urgency. It carried purpose. Ethan had already called ahead. Not as a CEO. Not as someone protecting a company. As a son asking for a chance he should have taken years ago. The hospital lobby was bright, almost too clean, the scent of antiseptic sharp in the air. Nurses moved quickly past them. Monitors beeped somewhere down the hall. Life continued in small, measured sounds. Ethan walked forward without hesitation, the folder still in his hand, Olivia a step behind him. At the end of the corridor, a door opened before they reached it. She was already there. Margaret Hayes' sister. The voice from the phone. Older now, but her eyes held the same steadiness Olivia carried. She did not speak immediately. She looked at Ethan, then at the folder, then back at him. Ethan stopped a few feet away. For a second, neither of them moved. Then she stepped forward. Fast. Not controlled. Not measured. She closed the distance and pulled him into an embrace so sudden it broke whatever distance he had left. Her arms wrapped around him tightly, her grip firm, real, undeniable. Ethan froze for a fraction of a second, then his hands lifted, uncertain at first, then closing around her as if something inside him had finally given way. His breath caught. Not sharp. Not loud. Just enough. She held him there, her voice breaking as she spoke. You came, she said. Ethan's eyes closed, the words settling deeper than anything he had read that night. I should have come before, he replied, his voice unsteady now. She pulled back just enough to look at him, her hand still gripping his arms. You are here now, she said. That is what matters. Olivia stood a few steps away, watching, her hands resting quietly at her sides. She did not step forward. She did not interrupt. She simply stayed there, her presence steady, her role complete. The older woman turned slightly toward her, her eyes softening. "You brought him," she said. Olivia gave a small nod. "He needed to see it," she replied. The woman looked back at Ethan, then at the folder in his hand. "Is it there?" she asked. Ethan nodded once. "Everything," he said. His voice steadied as he spoke, not from control, but from clarity. "He signed it. He admitted it. And he left it for me to find." The woman exhaled slowly, her shoulders lowering as something long held began to release. She reached out again, this time taking his hand, her fingers wrapping around his with a slight tremble. "Then it is finished," she said quietly. Ethan tightened his grip around hers, not letting go. "No," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "It is not finished." She looked at him, questioning. Ethan held her gaze, then glanced briefly at Olivia before returning to her. "It is being made right," he said. The words did not echo. They settled. Real. Decided. The hallway around them continued as before. Nurses passing. Doors opening and closing. Life moving forward in quiet ways. But in that moment, something else shifted. Not just a company. Not just a name. A connection that had been broken long before either of them fully understood it. The woman squeezed his hand once more, her voice softer now. "Your father carried it alone," she said. "You do not have to." Ethan's eyes lowered for a brief moment, then lifted again, clearer than before. He did not pull his hand away. He held it. He stayed. And as the weight of everything finally settled into something that could be carried, not hidden, he spoke one last time, his voice quiet but certain. "Then I will not."